Hello, I'm Kaushik. I am a previous student of NS Lab. Uh, I am here at Cambridge as of today, but I'll be moving to a different city in about 10 days' time. Uh, Today, I'm going to present on speak about how to model complex biological data in a database. This presentation I had given it to somebody, some other institution a few days back. I'll be repeating it specifically for people from NS Lab, or generically for people who are from life science background, but also are familiar with at least a little bit of programming. So a, a brief about myself. Yeah, I'm basically from Bangalore. I did my BSc there, MSc there, and worked in the industry for some time. Then did the PhD at Molecular Biophysics Unit, and then currently I am doing research in protein structural biology at the University of Cambridge, UK. But I've also closely collaborated with a few groups from US. So who is a data scientist? So before I go into the actual how do you model complex data in a database, I want to actually touch upon uh, who is a data scientist, because you know uh, what I'm going to speak today comes under the broad purview of data scientist or being a data scientist. So the technical definition of data scientist is someone who studies or works in the data science. So the use of scientific methods to obtain useful information from computer data. So the underlying assumption here is that uh, you will be working with lots of data. But to start off, the data can be coming from any source. So of course, this is in the context of biomedical data sciences. So uh, your domain expertise is essential. You need to understand where the data you're getting is coming from, as to what methods they are, what is the data trying to represent. Is it trying to establish some pathway information, or something to do with transcriptomes or genomics kind of data. So you basically need to understand the technique uh, and the source of this data. That is where the domain expertise comes into picture, and that is where being having a strong life science background is essential to become a data scientist in this field. And then obviously you need to know some kind of mathematics, a little basics of mathematics and statistics as well. Nothing fancy here. It's just you should be thorough in your basic understanding of correlation. What is a correlation? What is regression? What is extrapolation? Something to do with just 10th and 12th standard mathematics. If you are not familiar with it, like I was when I started my PhD, uh, go back to your 12th standard book and study it. It's not hard. That's what I did, by the way. And then IT skills. Definitely, when you're handling lots of data, you need to have some kind of IT skills. I'm assuming you already have a little bit of programming experience. If not, even if you have some experience handling lots of tables in Excel sheets or other kinds of databases, that's fine. If you do not know, then it's fine. But if you know, that you will be able to use your software engineering skills better and use the data in more efficient manner if you are aware of software engineering skills. So then we have just briefly discussed what is data scientist, who is a data scientist. But then coming to the another core of data scientist, what is data science? So again, in the context of our discussion today, your data can be coming from various sources, which I have represented here as in the form of central dogma of molecular biology. Like, it can be something to do with DNA, something to do with RNA, protein, metabolites, and these can come from various databases, open source databases like PDB, or UniProt, CHEMBL, and a lot more. Uh, so what is this data? You're getting all this data, but what exactly is this data? So data is just a collection of facts and figures. So it has to be interpreted. So the data as is of no value generally, unless it is interpreted. So how do you go about interpreting it? Uh, First of all, yeah, the data can be coming from large scale omics project, like I just said here. Uh, then how do you interpret this? This is what is the information that you derive out of data. So what is the essence of the data that you have, wherein you use lots of visualization aids to help you assess and understand this data. This is where your plotting skills, graph skills comes into picture. I should not use graph here because I'll be using graph term in a different context in a couple of slides. So it's basically plotting figures and representing this as some uh, uh, plots. So this is where your visualization skills, plotting skills, and also the basics of statistics and maths help you a lot in understanding and interpreting vast amount of data as to how the data behaves, what is the distribution, where is the mean, median, are they very different, are they same, what is the range, all these kinds of basic multivariate statistics kind of information will give you a better understanding of how the data is, how the data is represented, and what is the breadth of the data, and various other aspects of the data. And once you have this information, and then you actually get knowledge, so hopefully hopefully you will get some knowledge from this. This is where your insights comes into picture. So what I'm trying to say here is, you start with the data and then you try to interpret the data, but when you come to the top of this pyramid, which is the insight, this is where your domain expertise also comes into picture. Because whenever any data is provided to you, any data from any source will always have some kind of clauses or bias or errors associated with this. Depending on what experimental method you have has been performed to generate this data, the bias or the error can be different. So how do you compare these data sets? If you're getting several data from, say, for example, UniProt, which is largely sequence based information, but then you're also getting information from data from CHEMBL, which is again largely structural based information, then how do you compare these two? Because they will be generated from different kinds of experimental methods. So what are the errors associated with it? How do you interpret these data sets when you want to combine them and analyze them in a panoramic fashion? So all these things comes into picture at the insight level, at which stage you should have sufficient domain expertise. You should basically understand your biology or chemistry to make sense and get insights of the data. For example, if you're trying to understand a specific process, like if you want to understand why a specific pathway is not behaving the way it is supposed to behave, which is leading to cancer, then what are the players, what proteins are involved, what genes are involved, are there any transcription factors which are being overexpressed and hence leading to overexpression of some proteins? How do you interpret this information? And from the data that you have, is it the expression data, is it the uh, uh, you know protein data? So this is how you get knowledge from the actual data. So this is just again overview of what is data science. uh, but today what I'm going to say, this is so far is just introduction. So today what I'm going to say is extremely specific about how you get from this facts and figures to the interpretation part. So I'm assuming that you'll be already familiar with the domain expertise, but for today I'll be only concentrating on how do you go from this stage to this stage, the facts and figure to interpretation stage. So what is data modeling? So you have lots of data. So how do you go about modeling it? So what are the steps involved? So first of all, you need to, as I said, I have already said several times that you have to understand the data. When I say understand, you have to really ask questions about what is the source of the data, what are the kinds of errors that might be associated with it, have somebody else already tried to understand this data, and what are their conclusions. So all these things, all these background verifications should be done, sort of background verification before you actually start any project. And then you have to decide what kind of data storage uh, 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 do you prefer. How do you basically store the data? You can store it in sheets of paper, or a electronic lab notebook, or in an Excel sheet, or in a database, in a typical SQL kind of database. How exactly is the data stored? Is it stored in the cloud, physically stored in the cloud, or was it stored on your local hard drive? All these things also matter when the data is very, very huge. And if you want to do some complex analysis on the fly on this data, so if it is on the hard disk, yeah, then you need not worry about any data redundancy, which might be affected by low internet connection or poor internet connection. So all these things should also be considered when you're starting to do data modeling. And then again, quality and consistency, again, these two are interrelated. uh, when you understand the data, you will also be able to understand what is the quality, what are the things which I can uh, more or less comfortably interpret from this data. And there are some things that cannot be interpreted from certain kinds of data. Uh, uh, for example, there are some things that you can interpret more comfortably with X-ray crystallographic data, but you can't interpret some things from NMR spectroscopic data. And the reverse is also true. So if you are interested primarily in domain motion and kind of normal mode analysis kind of information, then probably the data that you get from NMR structures is preferred over X-ray structures. So again, what are the things that you want to uh, uh, analyze, and how do you go about it? And again, this is quality, and also consistency, in the sense, how consistent is your data? Is your data over representing some kinds of subsets? For example, if I'm trying to merge different kinds of data, it might be possible that I have 90% of the data is actually from one specific experiment, and 10% is from a different kind of experiment. Like I just said, 90% of the data can be from X-ray crystallography, but the 10% could be from NMR. So is it meaningful to compare them? Is the comparisons and the interpretations that I make, will it be consistent, because the data is not equally represented in the kinds of uh, experimental techniques? So all these things should also be considered. And then retrieval efficiency, again, I just briefly discussed it earlier. So how do you retrieve this data? As I said, if it is locally stored, then you employ some techniques. If the data is remotely stored, then you employ different techniques. So are you writing scripts to retrieve it, or are you manually going through several Excel sheets and doing some calculations on a piece of paper? I mean, there's nothing wrong about it. It again comes down to the last topic, which is the primary question, in the sense, what is the question that you're trying to address? You can, it all comes down to the primary question that you're trying to address. You can have lots of data. Just because you have lots of data, there will often be no need to understand and use all the data that you have. It comes down to what question you are trying to address. So for example, if you have all the data of all people living in India, and my question is, what is the average height of men? Then there is no point including women data at all in my data analysis, because my question is average height of men. So just because you have data, you don't need to use it. So based on the primary question, you will have to reconsider all these things. What are you trying to understand? How efficiently the data is stored and retrieved, and the quality and consistency which is sufficient to address your primary question. So yeah, it's basically what I just said. You can store in CSV file, text file, yeah, data integrity. Yeah, this is something, as I I just mentioned on the fly. So there will be sometimes there will be some kind of limitations in data retrieval or even data storage. For example, uh, s- uh, Excel sheets, I know after some length of columns, you can't store more columns. So I don't know if it is in some million of entries or something like that. So there is some software limits. You can't store, you can't go beyond a certain number of columns, sorry, rows, certain number of rows, and also columns. I know, yeah, also columns. So these are some kind of software limit which limits the amount of data that you can access at one point of time, a given point of time. You should be aware of this. And there is also hardware limitations. So I mean, if you are trying to understand, uh, if you want to open uh, a ribosome complex uh, PDB structure in your laptop, and if your laptop has not enough memory, then your laptop will crash. You'll not be able to open this large file, because it needs lots of memory. This is also true with even molecular dynamics simulations. If you when you want to open the entire dynamic simulation and load it into the memory. So these are some of the hardware limitations that you should be aware of while you're carrying out your modeling exercises. And largely, I would say most of the choices that we make can also be a limitation. As I said, depending on what primary question you're trying to understand, you have to appropriately choose right software and right hardware. Most often than not, I have also done this several times, that I will start with some choices for software and hardware, but during the course, I will realize that it is not at all efficient way of doing it. Then I will have to change my choices again and move the data to some other hard disk, or do something about it, or even change the database to make my data, to address the primary question more efficiently and more meaningfully. So yeah, this is also it can be a challenge. So for today, uh, I will be discussing on specifically databases, what kinds of databases, what are the choice of databases that we have, very briefly, and why do we need these options, and how do you choose one option over the other to analyze the data. So I'm assuming that you are already familiar with some kind of database management systems. Most often people would have used SQL databases, at least, if not used, they would have used it in some point of time without realizing that they're using it. So there are several kinds of databases. One of the most common is SQL kind of databases, which is also called as RDBMS, which stands for a Relational Database Management System. It's a broad principal way of representing data as tables largely. And there is now, in the recent probably decade or so, there are new kind of databases which has come into existence. It's called NoSQL databases, which have a completely different philosophy towards storing data. And when I say different, there are several different kinds within this different kind. So among them, I will be today discussing a kind of database which is called graph database. So again, to discuss this, we actually, it is always easier to understand with an example. So here is just an example, hypothetical data set. I have list of 10 organisms. Let us say you have list of 10 organisms, and for each of them, you have a list of all the proteins in each of these organisms. Then you also have data for sequence, structure of each of these proteins, and properties between these proteins. For example, protein sequence identity, or if there are two different protein structures, then RMSD between the two. So let us assume that you have already this data. Somebody has already provided this database, sorry, this data, or you have downloaded all these relevant data from various different database resources. On top of it, you also have other properties for each proteins, like whether it is cytosolic or not, whether it is a transmembrane protein, whether it has any role to play in cancer, or other diseases, whether it is a drug binding protein or not, and is there, is this protein involved in say, other protein interactions? If so, then what is the importance of it? Well, yeah, I mean, this is just a hypothetical data set to just give you an idea that the data is very huge. It's also very complex. So now, if you have this hypothetical data set in some fashion lying in some hard disk, then how do you go about modeling this? So one primary, probably the easiest, I mean, the easiest is just start with the, representing the data as a CSV file or Excel, which is definitely not very efficient way of doing it. But the second best way is using a database which is kind of SQL kind databases, in which you store some information in appropriate tables. For example, you can define a table called protein name and list all the proteins in this table, like for example hemoglobin, insulin, various other kinds. And then you can also define another table like organism, and then list all the organisms that you have. In this case you have 10 organisms: human, rat, mice, horse, whatever. And then let us assume you want to define another table which is gene loci, and you can list all the gene loci, exactly at what position some particular gene exists on a chromosome. And then depending on your question, you can you can attach them, you can join these tables, various tables, to address specific questions. So what do I mean? What do I mean by this? So for example, if my question is list of transmembrane proteins, so it's a very simple question. So let us assume you have all the protein names here, but you also have various other properties associated with the protein in the same table. So in this specific, for this specific question, there will be no need for me to join these tables. I can just use this one single table, and assuming if I've already put all the relevant data for this specific protein, I will be able to apply a filter and get all the proteins which are transmembrane, which is straightforward. And this you can do by query language called SQL query language. And the question can slightly be more complicated, in the sense list of proteins common between human and rat. So now you can already see that there will be need for me to join the protein name table and the organism table. So because I need to access the human and the rat from the organisms, and also all the kinds of proteins from the protein, and then make sure what is the common between what proteins are common between the two. Again, this can also be done pretty straightforward way, but the prerequisite here is that I need to join two tables. It can get more complicated. List of all the proteins between human and rat which do not share the same gene loci. So are there, again, this can be biologically relevant. Are there any proteins which are common between two organisms which do not share the same gene position? So yeah, in which case there'll be a need for me to join three tables. It can get more and more complicated in this way. One of the most complicated questions to answer in this typical representation is the last question, in the sense, pairs of proteins with less than 30% sequence identity between human and rat. So whenever I say pairs of protein, it means that I am comparing one protein against all the other proteins. That's protein 1 with protein N, protein 2 with protein N, protein 3 with protein N. So it becomes a huge matrix. So representing such a matrix is in database is possible, but retrieving information can be very difficult, and that's not it. On top of it, if I have other filters like other interests which will require me to join more tables, then essentially I'll be joining several tables. That becomes that makes data retrieval very cumbersome and inefficient. So how do you go about addressing this problem. Uh, so what I thought was I would give the idea of graph databases using not proteins but something else, which you are already very very familiar with, but you will be able to easily extrapolate this idea to proteins. So first of all, what is a graph database? So what is graph? So graph, mathematically, they are two entities. In graph, you have two entities. It can be, generally it is called node 1 and node 2. For example, here, I've taken the example of my favorite hero. Uh, 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 so there is one entity which is human being entity. Amitabh Bachchan, age 77, he has some properties associated with this entity. And there is another entity, Jaya Badri, at her age, her height. So there are some properties associated with that entity. And now this is node, and in graph database, nodes are connected by an edge. So this is an edge. So in this edge, I have associated some properties to this. So I have first of all labeled this edge like married. So this edge has been labeled. You have a specific kind of edge defined between these two entities. This is married edge, and the duration is a property. So how long have they been married for? You can have many more properties. So this is the very very basic idea of graph database. You're basically using a software platform to represent a graph. That's about it. That's about it. I have probably summed up the entire graph database in just this definition. So you're using a platform, software platform, to represent graph and retrieve the data in a very efficient manner. So this is graph database. So you have two nodes and an edge. This is what is graph. And when you represent this in a software and have a way of retrieving information, that is what is essentially graph database. So in this case, there are two entities. Each of them have different kinds of properties associated with them, and there is an edge. And edge can also have edge also has a special label associated with this, and it can also have different properties associated with this. So just to extrapolate this as is, if I were to have two proteins like hemoglobin and myoglobin, then I can have sequence identity as an edge, and then you have list of properties for myoglobin, chain length and whatever, and hemoglobin also, and then the edge entity will be like pairwise sequence identity, and then you can have whether it is what is sequence identity and how many what is sequence identity, and what is sequence similarity, and what is the matrix that you are using to define sequence similarity, like how, are you using BLOSUM 65 or PAM 250 matrix. So you can have various kinds of properties associated with a single edge. So you can essentially store lots and lots of properties which define the same parameter, which is the relationship between the two proteins. So this is how you can represent. So again, this is just an idea, but I'm sure you'll be able to extrapolate this. But it can get complicated. You can have a lot more complex information easily stored in graph databases. I have taken this example for a specific purpose because I hope everybody knows Amitabh Bachchan. If not, I will be very sad. So, and of course his family as well. So, in this case, I started with two nodes, but I'm also adding more nodes now. So Abhishek and Shweta are two more nodes, and now I want to establish connections between these nodes, how they are connected to each other. So as you can see, there is a difference in color. So this is a specific type of edge, but this is a different kind of edge. So Abhishek and Shweta are children of these two. So that is what is this graph representing here. And now I'm adding more entities and defining more edges. So Aishwarya is married to Abhishek, hence the same blue color when compared to this blue color. So, so you have the same kind of relationship between two, people. So this is automatically, automatically represented in the database. And going further, I am also defining Aradhya, another node, who is daughter of Aishwarya and Abhishek Bachchan. So this is just a family tree, sort of family tree of Amitabh Bachchan. So what's what's unique about this? So the unique factor is some of the data uh, is not explicitly modeled, but can be easily interpreted from the existing data. So I will come to it. I think I have, uh, I will come to the specific examples in a moment, but you can also define more kinds or different kinds of nodes. So as you can see, all these ellipses represent human beings. They're all humans. But now I am having a different kind of entity, which is a car. This has a completely different list, different set of properties. Obviously, car, it can have age, how long have you used, but it has different kinds of properties. Like in this case, it is SUV. It has, what is the engine, CC, etc. And who owns this? So this is a different kind of edge, which is relating one human node to another car node. But you can also define more and more edges. Like probably Amitabh owns this, but Aishwarya drives this. So you can define more kinds of relationships. So what's the fun? Why once the data is represented? So what's the big deal about all these things? So why do we need to do all this? What seems to be very, very complex representation? It seems very complicated, but I'm sure you understand this. You understand this tree already. But what makes our life easier will be, how do you retrieve this information? So there are various ways you can retrieve this information, because for example, if you are interested in only some properties associated with some specific nodes, for example, age, give me the, in this entire property, in this entire graph database, I want list of people who are above height of 6 feet. Obviously there are only two people here who are above 6. I think Aishwarya is not 6 feet and above, so I hope I'm not wrong here. But as far as I know, only Amitabh and Abhishek are over 6 feet. So if I ask this question, then automatically only two people will be retrieved, and all the properties associated with them will be retrieved. And height, with respect to height. So similarly, age, give me the list of people who are over the age of 70 or under the age of 10. So in which case Amitabh, Jaya, and Aradhya will be grepped out, or retrieved out. So this is node based querying. And then you can have a relationship based querying specifically. So without explicitly telling the database who are married to which other person, I can ask the question, give me the list of all the couples. So obviously, uh, a couple relationship is defined by marriage, and there are only two kinds of such edges here. So immediately, I will know that these two people are married, and these two are also married. So again, without going into the details of who is married to who and all these things, you can easily retrieve this information based on this type of edge that you have defined. So extrapolating this to proteins, or if you have defined protein pairs without explicitly telling what protein is related to what, because I'm interested in only pairwise RMSD or pairwise sequence alignment, sequence identity. So I could ask the question, if this was represented, if this was representing protein data, I could ask the question, give me the list of uh, uh, pairwise sequence identity between all the proteins in which the sequence identity is greater than 90 and the query coverage is over 80%. So you will get all the pairs immediately without you going into each of these proteins and trying to identify what is related to what and what is the pairwise sequence alignment and sequence identity between the two. So yeah, that is one example. So another is, if you want to know, again, if you want to know who owns a car, probably in this case everybody owns a car, but at least in the database there's only one person who owns the car, and that is Amitabh Bachchan. So without explicitly telling that, whether Amitabh Bachchan owns a car or not, instead of asking that question, I can ask, give me the list of people who owns a car, or give me the list of people who do not own a car but drives a car, which is in this case Aishwarya. So that is also another way of asking the questions from this database. Another, yet another way is node and relationship, wherein you are mixing not node alone or relationship alone kind of queries, but here you are mixing two kinds of queries. Like, give me the list of people who have mother-daughter relationship. So again, you can hopefully understand the power this querying gives to you. So without explicitly telling uh, uh, details of who is related to what, just by the fact that the data is represented in this fashion, I will be able to tell uh, who, I can ask a question that, whenever two people have the relationship parent and child, and if both of them have sex property is equal to female, then I know that they should be mother and daughter. So in this case, it will be Jaya and Shweta, and Aishwarya and Aradhya. So again, uh, retrieving the data becomes very, very easy if it is represented in this fashion. And the most important uh, factor is implicit data questions. So what do I mean by this? Sometimes the data is not explicitly defined, but you will be able to extrapolate some information based on the way data is represented. Now, in this specific case, I can ask the question, who are the siblings? Now, give me the list of siblings. So I have not explicitly defined what is the relationship between Abhishek and Shweta. But just because they share the same parents, same set of parents, I can interpret that they should be siblings. So yeah, so this is how you can interpret data just based on some facts. And another question is, who is aunt of Aradhya? So I can ask the question, give me the person who shares the same parents as one of my parent. So give me the person who shares same parents as one of my parent, and I know that person. I mean, and if that person is female, that I know that that person is Aradhya's aunt. Again, this is, I have not explicitly defined any relationship between the two, but just by the fact that this is represented in this fashion, you'll be able to easily interpret. So this is where your power of graph databases and querying the data comes into picture. Uh, yeah, so I think I've already addressed all these things. I'll just skip over in the interest of time. I wanted to finish in half an hour, but I think I've already taken more than half an hour. I don't have a way of keeping track of time. Anyway, so it is already used, graph databases are already used in several social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. All of them use graph databases. And even Protein KB, which is a protein knowledge base, is also using graph databases to integrate lots and lots of protein related information from various databases and making it queryable in one holistic panoramic fashion. You will be able to access this directly from their website. It's already available for you to query. And again, querying becomes a lot more efficient, and you can also implicitly identify some information which is not explicitly modeled, like I showed the aunt and Aradhya's aunt relationship. So sometimes, I have just shown two kinds of data representation, tables and graphs, but sometimes there will be need to mix and match these two kinds of databases. So If it is only tables, then there are several databases, examples like SQLite and Oracle. And for graph databases, I have largely used Neo4j, uh, which which is good, but there are some limitations in graph databases also. So if you want to mix these two, then there are other kinds of software platforms which lets you do this. It's called multi-model databases. One of such platform is OrangoDB, which I had started using recently, and it's very powerful. But I wouldn't encourage you to start with OrangoDB right away. I mean, it is definitely powerful, but if you are not familiar with any idea of graphs and ever used a graph database, then I would suggest go for Neo4j, get familiar with it, and once you hit some walls which are difficult to overcome, then you will realize why you would need OrangoDB, and then you will be able to graduate to use to OrangoDB. And if you have never used a graph, if you have never used any databases, then I would definitely recommend you to start with SQLite. So yeah, the whole purpose of this is the whole purpose of data science is you are actually pursuing a specific goal, because you can easily get lost in too much of data. Generally, I have come across in all the projects that I've handled, I have usually spent more time getting rid of data which was not useful for my specific question than the other way around. So you usually have lots of data. You have to understand what data is more important to address your specific question. You should definitely have your domain strength. If you don't have it, ask people, and I'm sure people will be, at least in my case, I have always found people who are more than willing to help me understand some specific techniques and limitations of some pipelines, experimental pipelines. Yeah, as I said, maths and statistics will always be there wherever, whatever you do in science. If you have never tried database, you should try SQLite. Uh, yeah, if you are only familiar with shell scripting and other kinds of HTML scripting, I would also encourage you to start Python. It's very easy. I started Python in NSLab, so it is not hard to start, and don't hesitate to ask for help. uh, I will also skip this part. I have, yeah, anyway, I have already shared the slides with you. You'll be happy to look at it. But one thing that I want to point out is this website, Khan Academy. I used to sit in NSLab for the first 6 months, just going through this Khan Academy website and trying to understand some basics of mathematics. Khan Academy was started from Salman Khan, not our Indian actor Salman Khan, but this Salman Khan is from Bangladesh, who has immigrated to US and started this awesome website. It's basically a teaching platform, and I should definitely say, I should acknowledge that I have been extremely benefited by spending my time on this learning platform. It has lots of things to learn from. I will encourage you to try it out yourself. It's free, by the way. And yeah, of course, I would like to thank Ines first of all. My primary motivation today to share this talk with you and re-record this with you is because I feel a sense of commitment to NSLab, and that is because I have always been benefited from all the positive interactions that has happened in NSLab, and the source of this positivity is definitely NS.